Yesterday, Cardinal Sarah broke his silence since being suddenly dismissed from his post in the Roman Curia by Pope Francis. The dismissal came out of the blue, but has since coincided with some other events that point to liturgical changes likely coming that Cardinal Sarah likely would have not gone along with. In his interview with an Italian outlet, the Cardinal speaks of having great affection for Francis, and denies all rumors that the two have ever been at odds. You may have heard about this already, but if not, get ready, because there is an idea among traditionally minded Catholics that Cardinal Sarah is a defender of traditional Catholicism, when the reality is that he is of the same approach as Benedict XVI and his failed hermeneutic of continuity. You'll hear him speak about a true council and divisions in the Church, and what you'll hear is something similar to what the official Vatican line had been since the Council until Francis. Oddly, when he speaks of a hermeneutic of continuity, he breaks with Francis's formal statement from a couple of months ago, back when Francis declared anyone who did not follow his interpretation of Vatican II to be out of the Church. Go figure, I guess. I feel odd criticizing Sarah because I do admire him greatly, and I have a great deal of respect for him. He certainly has a love for our Lord that radiates from everything that he does. But here is his interview, at least most of it. I omit the closing statements about his personal future, which I'll summarize at the end. The interview was in text form, not on video, so I'll read his responses to the questions with some of my own commentary following throughout. So on to that. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, and comment, please. It helps the channel a lot. First, the interviewer begins by asking, "Your Eminence, everyone was surprised by your departure from the Congregation for Divine Worship. What does this mean?" To which Cardinal Sarah responds, "Like all cardinals, according to the rule in force, I had given the Holy Father my letter of resignation as prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments last June, on the occasion of my 75th birthday. At that time he asked me to continue my work in the service of the Universal Church, donec alter providetur. In other words, until the Holy Father decrees otherwise. A few weeks ago, however, the Pope informed me that he had decided to accept this request. I immediately replied that I was happy and grateful for his decision. I have often said, obedience to the Pope is not only a human necessity, it is the means of obeying Christ who put the Apostle Peter and his successors at the head of the Church. I am happy and proud to have served 3 popes, St. John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Francis, in the Roman Curia for more than 20 years. I have tried to be a loyal, obedient, and humble servant of the truth of the gospel. Even though some journalists continually repeat the same nonsense, I have never opposed the Pope." End quote. Sarah goes on and describes the present internal divisions within the Church, a division that is described as between traditionalists and the rest, except he unfortunately uses secular terms usually reserved for battles between public servants and parties, rather than the terms usually used to describe the inner struggles of the Church. It's frankly disheartening. But it's not surprising, if you've paid attention. Here you get insight into why some of us have been skeptical that Cardinal Sarah was ever a traditionalist at all. The best of the present hierarchy and the best candidate for Pope, absolutely, I will never contest that, but he's not a traditionalist. I'll let him speak for himself and you'll see what I mean. First, the interviewer asked the basic question. "You seem to be expressing regret. What do you want to say? What do you mean by ideological?" Then Sarah responds, quote, "Today in the Church, too often we act as if everything is a question of politics, power, influence, and the unjustified imposition of a hermeneutic of Vatican II that totally breaks and is irreversibly at odds with tradition. It has been a great suffering for me to witness these factional struggles. When I spoke of liturgical orientation and sense of the sacred, I was told, 'You are opposed to the Second Vatican Council.' This is false. I don't believe that the struggle between 2 secular political labels has any meaning in the Church. These categories are political and ideological. The Church is not a field of political struggle. The only thing that counts is to seek God ever more deeply, to meet him there and humbly kneel down to adore him. Pope Francis, when he appointed me, gave me 2 instructions. First, to implement the Constitution on the liturgy of the Second Vatican Council, and second, to bring to life the liturgical legacy of Benedict XVI. I am firmly convinced that these 2 directives form a single direction. Indeed, Benedict XVI is certainly the one who understood Vatican II most deeply. Continuing the liturgical work of Benedict XVI is the best way to implement the true council. Unfortunately, some ideologues want to set the pre-conciliar church against the post-council church. They are dividers. They are doing the work of the devil. The church is one, without rupture, without changing course, because her founder, Jesus Christ, is the same yesterday, today, and forever. See the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 8. She goes towards God. She directs us towards Him. From the profession of faith of St. Peter to Pope Francis through Vatican II, the Church turns us towards Christ. Giving the liturgy its sacred character, leaving room for silence, and even celebrating at times towards the east, as Pope Francis did in the Sistine Chapel or at Loreto, is the profound and spiritual fulfillment of the Council. An extraordinary coincidence. On the very day of announcement of my departure, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI sent me the French edition of his works on the liturgy. I saw in it an invitation from Providence to continue this work, to restore a liturgy that puts God back at the center of the life of the Church." End quote. Sarah is right about reverence and about the focus that we should all have being God, but the idea that the Council had this purpose is frankly sadly mistaken, as is the evidence of its planning, its sessions, its documents, and its implementation. They all speak to something else that was going on, a secularization of the Church, and put it bluntly. It can't be denied that statements exist within those documents that are more than just at odds with what the Church taught before the Council. You can go find the lists of conflicting statements all over the internet. That can't be denied, and has been well demonstrated over the decades. But I've said this numerous times. As much as I personally really like Cardinal Sarah, he is, at the end of the day, one of a kind with Benedict XVI, and he would be probably the best pontiff theologically since the Council, but still a servant of that same Council whose ideas ended up upending the Church. But continuing. Next, he is asked about his relationship with Francis. Sarah dispels the rumors that he has ever been at odds with Pope Francis, and instead that he has great affection for him. I'll have more to say on that in a moment, after what he says. But on his affection for Francis, quote, "Some people insinuate without reason or even being able to provide concrete and credible proof that we were adversaries. It's not true. Pope Francis likes frankness. We have always worked together with simplicity, despite the fantasies of journalists. For example, Pope Francis understood very well and received the book for which I had collaborated with Benedict XVI from the depths of our hearts. I did not hide from him my concern about the ecclesiological consequences of questioning the current practice of priests to remain without the nuptial sacrament. When he received me after its publication, when the press campaigns accused me of lying, he supported and encouraged me. He had read and appreciated, it seems, the autographed copy that Pope Benedict XVI, in his delicacy, had sent him. On that occasion, I realized that truth always triumphs over lies. There is no point in getting involved in big communication campaigns. It is enough to have the courage to remain true and free. The support of Pope Francis, the constant affection of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, and thousands of messages of thanks from priests and lay people from all over the world help me to understand the depth of the message of the risen Jesus. Do not be afraid." End quote. Something I can attest to is this. If you're on Twitter, you'll see that the Cardinal Sarah account has a long history of retweeting the strange and sometimes barely coherent things that the Francis account tweets. Sometimes Sarah will tweet quotes of Francis directly. Sarah has spoken numerous times of his affection for Francis, and the rare times he has ever spoken publicly against him, it wasn't against Francis himself, but against some position that Francis has taken, and usually without ever naming the Pope Francis himself. If you search my channel for the couple of essays he's released over the years, you'll see what I mean. But Sarah goes on in some closing statements, and when asked how he sees the future of the Church, he says he sees the Church as taking on water right now, that the Church is experiencing its Good Friday, from struggles within that are best illustrated by priests like Uncle Ted, but he reminds his readers that the Church will rise triumphant in the end. Perhaps that is the best thing in this interview, his reminders to not be afraid. He also says that for himself he'll be spending his time reading, praying, traveling, and writing. I don't think we've seen the last of Cardinal Sarah. He certainly seems to be indicating that that's the case. For my money, this interview wasn't actually surprising in the slightest. Cardinal Sarah has long been a defender of the Pope, regardless of who it is. He appears to be of the mindset that the Pope must be adhered to closely. He takes the same position of St. Therese rather than that of St. Cajetan. St. Cajetan said that when a pope must be opposed, it is our duty to do so openly and to his face. So I'm not surprised. I still personally like and have great admiration for Cardinal Sarah and his mind, even if I wish he would be a greater defender of tradition. But maybe he'll come around with prayers and the rest. What did you think of this interview and the news of his speaking? Some of you certainly saw that Taylor Marshall presented something similar last night, and he dissected the letter. What were your thoughts on Sarah's defense of Francis and his relationship with Cardinal Sarah? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, please. As always, pray for the Church, and look to this Sunday for my video on the Penitential Rosary, and please take part. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.